Hello, doctors. Welcome to our conversation. So, it is my pride and joy to be sharing this beautiful morning, having a conversation with another beautiful soul. So, without further ado, let me introduce. Welcome to our community of doctors. Welcome to our community of healthcare professionals. We are all about helping doctors thrive and finding joy in their personal, financial, and professional life. And today we have a beautiful person who's going to be sharing her expertise and her love for what she has done so well with doctors. I will give a professional introduction. She calls upon her experience as a practicing surgeon, clinical faculty at the University of Washington School of Medicine, and a serial entrepreneur to help physicians and dentists achieve their personal, professional, and financial goals that has attracted them to a career in medicine. She's author of several books, including The Myth of Rich Doctor, The New Thriving Medical Practice, 9 Money Mistakes. And she's also a nationally noted expert on doctors and their relationship with money. So you want to listen up, doctors. She delivers keynote addresses and coaches physicians who want to thrive. So without further ado, let me bring on Dr. Vicky Ragnar on this conversation with us.
It is a delight to be there with you. I'm actually in the United States, and it's always so much fun when you and I get together, try to figure out a space and time when it works for both of us.
Totally. It's like, it's a time capsule, Vicky. Everything has been capsuled because we can do everything and anything we want on technology. So I'm so privileged that I can still have your precious time and energy for today's conversation, which is a very important conversation, your money committee. So I will let Dr. Vicky tell you, what is your money committee all about?
All right. Well, things might be different in Singapore, but here in the United States, about half of doctors are behind in retirement planning. This is not an issue of intelligence, right? If you can figure out how to take out a gallbladder, you can certainly figure out how to implement basic steps in building wealth. So I challenged myself, how do you explain it? And what I decided was based on my experience with a patient who had what we called at that time multiple personality disorder. So this patient of mine had different people who were occupying her brain. She was actually like a 40-year-old nurse, but when she woke up from the operation, she was this frightened 6-year-old girl, and she had about a dozen others who populated her body. So I just kind of went with that, and I thought about the way I make my own financial choices. And when I do that, I can feel that like different parts of myself are making choices, right? Like the impulse purchase or the considered rational purchase. So I thought, well, what if there are people running around in my mind making decisions? And so these are the members of the money committee that I think that we all have. And at any moment of time, one of these members of the committee is sort of front and center, just kind of like my patient woke up as a 6-year-old. So the 6-year-old was kind of in charge. Okay, so here are the members. And I know that this is new for you, so I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say. Okay, so the first member of the money committee is the CEO. And this is the person we would like to believe is in charge. So what does a CEO do? A CEO has a vision, they gather information, and they make choices about what would best serve somebody to get to that goal, right? So the CEO isn't necessarily in the trenches doing the work, but they're guiding the choices. And as much as we would like our CEO being in charge, unfortunately, I think there are these other members who could be in charge on a frequent basis. One of them is the child. So the child wants what the child wants, and it wants it now. And the reality is that, to become a physician, to practice medicine, there's a lot of deprivation, right? And we sort of feel like we deserve things. We want what we want when we want it. And so I find that especially when I'm stressed, Like shopping is a great stress management tool. And biology actually bears that out. You get a hit of dopamine when you go shopping. Have you ever gone to the store and like bought something and like never even worn it, but it just feels better to have bought it?
Totally. Actually, almost all the time.
So there's something kind of about that hunting and gathering. So I know that for myself, I will indulge that child within. And a lot of the things that stand between doctors and wealth, I think, are letting that child run the money committee. Another member of the money committee is the accountant, right? This is the member who knows what money is coming in and what money is going out. And the honest truth is that most doctors, at least here in the United States, sort of have the accountant like on vacation. Like if you would ask most doctors, tell me, what does it cost to run your household each month? They could offer a number, but usually that number is off by about an order of magnitude. So a lot of doctors don't have a clear sense of what their monthly financial needs are. They sort of don't have an idea about, how much they might need in order to be able to retire. So, having the accountant as part of the active money committee really does help build wealth. All right, another member of the money committee is security, right? So this money committee member is intended to keep you safe. They're on the lookout for risks. They want to make sure that they're protecting you. And again, here in the United States, there are an awful lot of people who are kind of financial predators who prey on doctors. And so if doctors hear about something new, they're always wondering, well, is this really safe? Is this really a good idea? I've never heard of that before. Is that really a good investment? Is that a good place to put my money? And the reality is that this is a very, very powerful money committee member. In general, this is the committee member that will keep you from moving forward with something that truly is very effective in helping to build wealth. What do you think so far? Can you identify these money committee members?
Totally, Vicky, because I was actually thinking when you said your money committee, I actually started visualizing this cartoon movie Inside Out. Like
exactly, yes.
Those emotions that are sitting in, and they are like, they say that they have 5 core emotions: the fear, the anger, the joy, the disgust, the sadness, and the struggle to cope up with your life. And if each of them are in charge of this one particular driver's seat, and Joy tries to make sure that she's always in the seat, but she realizes all the other emotions are equally important. So I saw your money committee or something like that, like the CEO, the child, the accountant, and the security. It is beautiful.
There's more though. There's more.
Fantastic.
Okay. So another one is the time traveler. So this is the person who's not living in the present, but is living in the past or in the future. So the person who is living in the past, most of us go through childhood and have some kind of money trauma that we don't necessarily recover from. And you and I have had this conversation of financial post-traumatic stress disorder. But if the circumstances in our current reality remind us of the circumstances of the childhood trauma, we can actually sort of revert back to that stage and become the person we were during the time of the trauma. And that does not lead to good money choices. Some people live in the future and they say, well, if we spend this money now, what's going to happen? Are we going to be homeless when we're 60? And so in general, the person who's living in the future generally is holding back the joy. Like, let's restrict ourselves let's not enjoy today so that we can be okay in the future. And of course, if you're finding joy in your money, it's this balance between today and tomorrow, right? So this can be really interesting. So the time traveler. The next one is the historian. And the historian is the one who's the keeper of the history. Okay, you made this money choice in the past. Here's what happened. Let's learn from these mistakes. And the historian doesn't always put things together in a way that makes rational sense. So things can be correlated, but they're not necessarily causal. So there can be a lot of superstitions in what happens if you make a certain decision. An example, and this is kind of an extreme example, is that a woman bought a new car. It was her first new car. The next week, her mother died. And in her mind, there was that association, right? I can't spend money on myself. I can't indulge myself. I can't have joy because something bad is going to happen. And then the last committee member is the soothsayer. They're the future tellers. And wouldn't it be great if we could read the future? But if you're reading a certain kind of future and trying to project that, you may or may not be right. So, just like in Inside Out, imagine all of these committee members, around a big round table, and somebody's in the director chair. Sometimes these committee members aren't even present, but a lot of times there can be sort of a negotiation. So let me give you an example that has nothing to do with money. So I want to eat more healthfully, right? And so I know what kinds of food choices are healthful. But I also know that those unhealthy choices, like eating something with sugar, they're going to immediately adjust my emotions to where I want to be. So like the child in me is saying, yes, Ben and Jerry's ice cream sounds really, really great. And then the CEO says, look, we want to stay on track. We want to be healthy and make consistent, healthy choices. And sometimes the CEO will win. Sometimes the child will win. And the same thing happens financially.
Wow. It's awesome. So we actually have about 7 committee members who are actively participating in our brains when it comes to financial decision making.
Right.
That's amazing. The CEO, the child, the accountant, the security, the time traveler, the historian, and the soothsayer. Am I right?
Right. Right. Exactly.
So for the doctors who are watching us, what do you reckon that do we need to be aware of who is at the driver's seat for us to figure out that we need to make a great financial decision making process? Do we need to be aware of it? All
right. So I would recommend that. So sometimes I just imagine that I'm sort of in the corner of the room observing what's going on in my head. A lot of the kinds of money decisions that erode your ability to build wealth are the things that you decide to do impulsively, like they're really fast. You're on your way home and I want to go buy a new skirt. I need that new skirt. And so that's fast. But if you could just kind of step back and say, okay, I'm looking down at my money committee. What's going on? It's the child. The child wants something right now. Or maybe the CPA is saying, whoa, 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 whoa. We have made this decision to invest in real estate, to invest in our child, to invest in life insurance. And let's really sit back and think about this. So I think the first step is just playing around with this idea and having awareness at any moment about what committee member is driving that money choice.
Wow. So the awareness of knowing which committee member of your money committee is sitting down and driving that decision that you're trying to make. That awareness is what we are driving now. Wow.
Right.
So, I have to relate this to our next topic, is our 9 money mistakes. Did you actually know about this when you were writing your book, 9 Money Mistakes That Doctors Shouldn't Make?
This, quite honestly, this was actually new. A friend of mine and I decided to co-host a retreat for women. She is a great believer in nonviolent communication. She also has an interest in nutrition, so as she describes it, she's interested in what goes in and out of your mouth. And so this whole idea was making peace with money, right? Because there's your financial situation, and then there's the way that you see your financial situation. So there are a lot of people who have a lot of angst about money. And this is really when I put this money committee idea together.
Amazing. Wow. So this money committee is going to be, I think we're going to be talking about these members very often now, Vicky, now that we have sort of given them a personification, right? These guys are real in our committee now. So there are 7 members sitting in my head right now when I need to make a decision on buying the next property, or buying the next investment, or buying the next insurance, or shall I get into the private practice? So I think the doctors would love to know that these are the 7 guys who are going to be running it, and you might want to know how to make best use of them. So how do we maximize this, Vicky? How do we maximize all these 7 people that we come up with the best decision and we don't regret it?
Okay, so the first is just have awareness and treat yourself with compassion. Because if you're not where you'd like to be yet, it's usually because somebody other than the CEO is driving the choices. Mm-hmm. So just have compassion for yourself. Understand that the past is the past. You are going to make peace with that, but you might want to make different choices as you move forward. Mm. I think that probably the best thing to do is just set an intention that the CEO is going to be making the money choices. Mm. And a good way of doing that is just making a promise to yourself, or maybe to your family members, that anytime you make a purchase over a certain amount, you're just going to wait, right? Mm. And for me, it's $100. So anytime I want to spend more than $100, I can't spend it that day. It can't be an impulse purchase. I need to sort of sleep on it. And sometimes just giving yourself a little time, just by taking a breath, it will allow the CEO to kind of step in. And that's who you want making your choices, the CEO.
Right.
All right. And go ahead.
Sorry, I thought, right. I was thinking out loud. The discrimination, which means you want the CEO who actually uses the wisdom and intellect, the logic, and also gets the feeling and intuition combined, and making that right.
Exactly. Exactly. And then just embracing all of these other parts. Like, you're about joy. The child within is the vessel for the joy. So you want to do this, you want to sort of hold this child within with compassion. You know, if you imagine a part of you say, but I want that new skirt, I want it now. You know, the CEO could say something like, it would be really, really great to have that new skirt. What would you wear it with? Tell me about the shoes, you know? So you can really get in the fantasy of it without actually indulging it. So I would not get punitive with any of these committee members, because they all have a job. They're all there to keep you safe and to help you get to where you want to go. Okay, so you've decided that the CEO is going to be in charge. But the next step is the CEO has to have a vision. Like, if we're working towards a goal, what is it that we value? What is it that we want to get to? So, like, I know what's important to me. I want the way that my money flows to reflect my own values and be able to make that kind of contribution. So, for example, for me, right now I'm really passionate about everyone in the world having enough to eat. So are my finances aligned with that, right? So my CEO knows how much discretionary income that I have and how much I want to put towards that, right? I mean, I know people who just like literally spend all of their money helping others, and then they make themselves financially vulnerable. But the CEO has a sense of the big picture and knows how individual things fit into that bigger picture.
Wow, beautiful. So now we have the money committee. Now we have a decision-making process that you want the CEO to be ultimately at the seat after he listens to all the 7 committee members. And then you have a clear vision of your life, of your professional life, of your financial life. And all this is a bigger part of your personal life. And then you want to ensure that finances are aligned with that. Am I right, Vicky?
Right.
Summarize it
right.
well? Okay.
The other thing to do is figure out whether any of these committee members don't feel like they're at the table. And if they're not present, I encourage you to invite them. Like inviting the accountant to the table. Like having a sense of what's going in and going out. If we were to manage a critically ill patient, we would not dream of doing that without knowing the I's and O's. And knowing our financial I's and O's, what goes in and out, is equally important. So as I work with women, this is an important step.
Wow, this is a very epiphany moment when I look at this. So you are inviting each of these imaginary members, and I do not know how doctors can scientifically or put that in their head that you can't see it but they're real, but I'm very sure they understand this, because this was actually mentioned in the book Think and Grow Rich, and it's an amazing book to read to get yourself on the next level in your life. And they talk about this council members, or the council meeting you're supposed to have every night before you go to sleep. So whatever vision or whatever dream that you have in your life, it'll actually happen, because you actually invite these members to mentor you, to coach you to what you can become, what they have become. So that's amazing. So I can imagine the same setup over here, Vicky, whereby you're having your imaginary council members, but they're so real in your head. You can't see them, but they're very real. And you personify them and you give them that power, and you have that intellectual wisdom to see how each of them can make that decision-making process fruitful. It's amazing. Thank you.
And I think even giving them names would be helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just Jocelyn. She's just, spouting off right now. Jocelyn, come on over here. Let's talk. You're going to be okay, Jocelyn.
So my female physicians, so my female doctors, just listen up. This is the power. This is the powerhouse of our brains, and we can maximize that by making better decisions if we actually personify this imaginary character to a characters that we can actually relate to, or we can actually. I'm already giving them names. My child is known as Joy.
I love it.
Or maybe my daughter should be the accountant. I'll give Ria. Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So all of them are there, and when any of them are not asleep, when any of them are not present, it's usually because we've invited them not to be present, right? So if somebody had a childhood trauma, they want to separate themselves from it, right? But what happens is that you can't really make a committee member go away. They're always there, and they're just going to show up in dysfunctional ways. So and I think I told you this, and I think I should just start to call you Joy. But I told you about this doctor who was really, really worried about whether she was going to be able to pay her mortgage. And this was really concerning. And if you met her for the first time, you'd think, oh, this poor woman, she's working so hard and she might lose her house. But the thing is that she had enough money in her checking account so she could just pay off her mortgage. But when she was a child, her family actually did lose their house in foreclosure. And so whenever money got stressed, she sort of reverted back to that unhealed financial trauma. And so it showed up in ways that was below her consciousness. Like, she didn't say, wow, this is reminding me of when I was a child and this terrible thing happened. Instead, there was a lot of angst and a lot of conflict. So, if you ever find yourself sort of behaving out of the ordinary, like, it just doesn't feel like you, chances are pretty good that you're reactivating or triggering some kind of childhood trauma. And so all you have to do is just take a breath and ask yourself, okay, what does this remind me of? If I go back into my childhood, what does this remind me of? And quite often just that exercise will help you understand, oh yeah, that was really, really terrible when we lost our house and mom and dad got so depressed and I was sort of on my own trying to make sense of this terrible, terrible loss. Because my parents weren't there to help me. But now I'm an adult, I can take care of that now myself.
I think we covered a really good example of this in our previous video. And it was very enlightening for me to realize that you could actually have a financial PSTD, right? That's what you nailed it as as a diagnosis.
Right, a post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, yes.
PTSD, yes. And I think it was very good to recognize that diagnosis actually lives in many of us, but we do not give it much thought. And after that conversation, I really gave it a lot of thought. But that really brings me up to our 9 money mistakes that we wanted to talk with doctors. And I think we probably are coming to an end to our conversation. So we will probably touch on, out of the 9 money mistakes, Vicky, which one is it that would relate to this money committee today? Is that our financial biology, the mistake number 1? Failure.
That is absolutely it. Absolutely. It's failure to understand the biology of our behavior. And again, we all would like to think that we make informed, enlightened choices, but that's not always the case. We live in a consumer culture. We're constantly being given messages about buying, and we have a certain biologic basis. And it's not good or bad, it just is. But unconscious spending, without an awareness of your biology, it's really hard to build wealth. If you follow your biology, you're going to go broke. Our biology is all about keeping us alive in the moment. And wealth building is about balancing today and tomorrow. So with compassion, understanding your biology and planning for it is an important thing that you can do to avoid some extreme mistakes that can cost some doctors hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars.
Wow. So the first mistake that we are giving away in the book, in the link below. So click on and you can always get the copy of your book. But it's very important for us to understand the failure to realize our biology. And if we have this money committee, we are able to realize our biology and we are able to plan for it. Wow. Thanks, Dr. Vicky. This is amazing. So we are able to make a better financial choice when we have that awareness. And now we know how to put that awareness into a plan that sort of gives you a structure or system to follow it through. If you're struggling to make a decision, right, doctors, this is something you should watch out for. Right, Vicky?
Exactly.
So thank you so much, Dr. Vicky. Thank you so much, doctors, for tuning in and learning about your money committee. We will be having more conversations as such every week. and we will be posting much more educational content for you to tune in, for you to plan and progress and have a beautiful standard in your personal, professional, and financial life. So thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. Stay tuned. Share it with other doctors if you feel that this has really given you an aha moment. And we will see you next week. Bye. Bye, Dr. Vicky.
Bye-bye.